Chester Gillette. Chester was born and raised in a place called Wicks, Montana, which at that time was a silver mining town, the late part of the 19th century. Chester was born to Louisa and Frank Gillette. Louisa, who was a deeply religious woman. Frank, Chester's father, he worked in the silver mines of Wicks. The Gillettes made their residence and lived in a tent. Louisa would say of Chester, he was always an irresponsible boy, full of activity, but we could always trust him. When Chester was 3 years old, the family packed up and moved to Spokane, Washington. Frank Gillette, Chester's father, had relatives in Spokane. Frank operated an express company out of a restaurant. Life was never easy for the Gillettes, and to make matters worse, Spokane was struck with a great fire of 1889. The Gillettes were left homeless and penniless. In the year 1892, the Gillette family joined the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army was really different then than it is today. The organization was very religious, and believe me, they took care of everybody. The Gillettes, now a family of 6. Chester, we see standing here in the center. His mother and father, 2 sisters, and 1 younger brother. The Gillettes stayed with the Salvation Army. You see, the Salvation Army was becoming the whole world, especially for Louisa, Chester's mother. She was making a name for herself, what the Army called Bands of Love. She was a dedicated crusader, bringing sinners and their souls to Jesus Christ. Chester, in his late teens now, through friends and family, was given a golden opportunity to attend college way in the East. So in the autumn of 1901, Chester Gillette enrolled in Oberlin College, which was in the state of Ohio. He went there to study English and the history of Shakespeare. We see Chester here holding the ball number 8. Gillette was great in sports. The college made him captain of the basketball team. But after about a year or so in college, Chester had enough and decided to leave. Chester, now on his own, living in Chicago, working in hotels and restaurants. He then landed a job with the Northwest Train Company as a railroad brakeman. But this was a very dangerous job. You see, these were the days of steam engines. Chester was once involved in a terrible train crash in which several people were killed. After this occurrence, Chester Gillette returned to his room in Chicago and headed for a place called Cortland, New York. Chester Gillette arrived here in Cortland in the early spring of 1905. Cortland at that time was a new town, but it was a town that was on the move. It had a population of around 11,000 people. Chester came to Cortland to see his uncle. His uncle, Noah Gillette, a tough, no-nonsense businessman, owned a company called the Gillette Skirt Factory. In the year 1905, the Gillette Skirt Factory was a lucrative business. Noah gave Chester a job there. This is what the company looks like today. This building is still in use. It is now an appliance store. In the year 1905, when it was the Gillette Skirt Factory, it employed around 200 people. There were stock clerks, supervisors, women who sewed the dresses and petticoats together. Chester started here at this lower level. His position was that of a stock clerk. His salary was around $10 a week, which is like minimum wage today. One day at the factory, Chester was walking by. An attractive young woman at her table sewing a dress. The girl had a ring on her finger, and the ring had slipped off. It rolled to the feet of Chester. He stopped, picked it up, handed it back to her. She thanked him, he bowed, and then he went back to work.